Hey there guys, what is happening? My name is Sumed Chatterjee and I'm a flow state coach from the Flow Zone Academy. I want to speak to you guys about the movie Limitless and how you can become limitless using the flow state. First and foremost, this is a video breakdown, okay? So I'm going to be comparing the movie Limitless to certain flow triggers and going to give you kind of a blueprint in terms of how you can do this for yourself without using any kind of like pill NZT-48, okay? First and foremost, if you haven't watched the movie, I would pause this video right now, go and watch the movie and come back to this because I don't want to give you any spoilers. Having said that, let's get right into it. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi says that those who are able to control their inner experiences get to determine the quality of their lives. What I want to remind you is how we control the inner world always affects the external world. So the fact that Eddie's brain, Eddie Mora, the main character, can use more of his brain, he could change his external world as well. And that's a clear example in the movie. So what is this movie about? Well, Eddie Mora, basically, he breaks up with his girlfriend, he gets rejected, and he has no future in his hand. He's kind of a schlub, right? And he goes through all of these changes, and his old friend gives him a drug that produces enhanced mental acuity. It's an untested chemical, and Eddie rises to the top of the financial world and attracts the attention of a tycoon who then intends to use him to make a fortune. But then they have these terrible side effects, and these dwindling supply of these pills gets Eddie to start slowly collapsing. So that's kind of the premise of the movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. How can this feeling of you getting into the flow state relate to the movie? And how can you get there? How can you allow yourself to go there yourself?
So if you should find it, and if you're alone, well, alone.
In the end, how much worse could it get?
Well, that's a depressing mindset to have. Alright, Eddie.
It is my name.
Just explains it all, man.
I didn't want to see anybody. Especially not my landlord's nasty young wife.
Tuesday. Look, enough, okay? Steve handles the rent, so you can feed your crap to him.
I suddenly had extra reason to get away from her. I had thoughtlessly ingested a substance.
Like the rent's not low enough.
I had gotten remarkably little information from Vernon about what this drug would do.
You could even be a bike messenger.
Perfect example of the inner critic, right, in action. And as we know, flow state is transient hypofrontality, where your inner critic and your prefrontal cortex shuts down.
And come up with that, really.
What if it was a hallucinogen?
It's pathetic.
Oh my god. Listening to her rag if I were tripping, I'd jump out a fucking window.
Hello? Are you listening to me? Do you get it? You are gonna be out on the streets.
And then I felt it.
You don't have a place to live.
We see right here, first and foremost, is a kind of like out-of-body experience, right? And you can definitely get these kinds of experiences with some kind of hallucinogen, but also you can get it through actually meditation and deep trance states where you get to actually see yourself doing something, right? Maybe not in the actual moment that it's being done, but you can definitely get these intense visualizations if you actually go inside of yourself. Now, there's a lot of instances in this movie where you see clones of him. Well, that's just his own brain, right? His mind is working like that. He imagines himself as these clones, right? So
I was blind, but now I see.
I was blind, but now I see. Okay, have you ever heard that book, Wayne Dyer, I Can See Clearly Now? Like, this is what this describes, right? That kind of epiphany, that aha moment, that breakthrough moment, which is very common from when you're in a flow state, you get these little gamma jumps, And this is exactly what a gamma jump looks like on screen, right? So he's getting this breakthrough, this aha moment, something is changing for him. He can see now, finally. But actually, he's just being more present to the moment. What exactly do you notice Eddie Mora doing in this scene right now? He's highly intuitive. He's using his observational skills to look at the details around him, the micro details. So he's seeing basically her hairline, he's noticing her eyes, he's noticing the bike, and he's noticing the lettering, and then he's noticing her ring.
What's wrong?
What?
So in that moment, Eddie recognizes that something is wrong with her, in her world, in her reality. He's showing compassion. He's dropping his ego, he's showing compassion to this person who's yelling at him.
You don't like me, and I don't blame you. You see a self-defeating, energy-sucking piece of shit who's sponging off your husband. You're wishing I'd blow my brains out, but my existence shouldn't make you this upset. What is it?
That's none of your business.
Something wrong in law school?
How do you know I'm in law school?
People who aren't usually don't carry around dry, academically constipated books about a dead Supreme Court justice.
You're a creep, aren't you? You've been following me.
No, I just noticed the book.
You just saw the corner of it. How did you know that?
So what Eddie is actually doing here is a common technique called cold reading, and basically you're saying what is in their minds out loud to them. So this is what actually like advanced psychics and people use. They use keen observational skills and they point them out to you.
I'd seen it before, 12 years ago in college. Sitting on the couch of a TA I was trying to make, waiting for her to come back out of the bathroom, hoping she'd have a condom. Somehow my unconscious had served that up. A memory I'd never even recorded, or was it there the whole time, and all I needed was the access.
When you can access the state of flow, your subconscious mind just starts pouring out. You'll notice yourself using strange metaphors and different things that you've learned, and different ideas just start coming out of you just because you have access to it now.
If you're writing a paper, that's not the book I'd use.
Well, who asked you?
Hastings has his oral history, I'd start there. Interesting point, grammatically this guy was an idiot, which sort of gives credence to the theory that one of the clerks he had fired actually wrote most of this guy's major opinions. You could Google the clerk's sons, they'd love to talk to you, exonerate their dad. That'd give you something that no one else has. Information from the Odd Museum show, a half-read article, some PBS documentary. It was all bubbling up in my frontal lobes, mixing itself together into a sparkling cocktail of useful information.
So what matters here is not so much about what he's saying, because he's pulling together like a PBS documentary, and this word shows that he's seen. What matters here is his delivery and his confidence and his eloquence in the way that he's speaking. He's not stopping for a pause. He's not I don't know. He's not doing any of that. He's just in the flow of it.
She didn't have a chance.
What are your suggestions?
We'd really worked on her paper, too. In 45 minutes, it was a polished gem. She was pleased. Home. But it couldn't be my home, could it? I mean, who would live like this? My first thought, torture. But saner heads prevailed.
So here you see sort of a push towards him actually recognizing and being aware of his environment. In this case, he's making his environment work for him, so he's incorporating richness in his environment. And to do this, he must clean up and get some chores done. I personally, I don't see chores as chores, I see them as missions. I don't see routines as routines, I see them as rituals. So even changing the words itself, he used the word torture there, right, to describe it. But if he kept using that word, it wouldn't really serve him. So what he did is he used that negative word, and then he bounced on top of that negative word, torture, to be able to actually do something about that torture. He went to solve the problem. But a lot of us, we see problems, but we don't see them as opportunities. We don't see them as areas which we can grow. We just see them as these issues in our lives, and we can't do anything about it. But there's a lot that we can change in here. It's very clear. Eddie Moore is just taking action here, and I think action is a huge part of getting into the flow state.
On it, I hadn't had a cigarette in 6 hours, hadn't eaten. So, abstemious and tidy? What was this? A drug for people who wanted to be more anal retentive? I wasn't high, wasn't wired, just clear. I knew what I needed to do and how to do it.
I wasn't high, wasn't wired, just clear. I knew what I wanted to do and how to do it. Just listen to this. This is exactly describing the flow state. And you don't need to get into these dopamine hit, like these addictions, right? Haven't had a cigarette. So the thing is, once you're in the flow state, you don't need all these dopamine boosts because you're feeling good already. You're enjoying what you're bringing to the table. Okay? There's a lot to learn from this guy. And so what now? Right into the work field, right? Right into the work zone, into the deep now. Just working and consciously just like typing away. I'm sure many of you guys have done this in your life, and you've noticed like when you're maybe writing a book or handing in an assignment, you're just completely in the zone and you're homed in and nothing else matters. That's what I'm talking about here. Alright, so let's take a look at the flow triggers here. So the first one, you see intensely focused attention. There he was honing into all of these different details. You remember that? Then we talk about clear goals. He talked about how he was feeling so clear.
Just clear.
So then we have immediate feedback. Her laughter is showing that what he's doing is on the right track, and obviously he got an end result from there, okay, in the bedroom. Then we have challenge skills ratio, okay, so basically he was challenged at that moment.
That's none of your business.
But then he also had the skills and the information that he was drawing from his past, his memories, to back it up.
That'd give you something that no one else has.
Information from the Odd Museum show, a half-read article, some
about
PBS documentary.
High consequences, he could have easily got, even more yelling at him in that situation. There could have been his eviction happening. There could have been so many different things happening in that moment.
You're a creep, aren't you? You've been following me.
However, he chose to take that high consequence and give himself a high reward instead from that consequence. So
It was a polished gem.
And the last one is rich environment. As we noticed, he started to clean up his environment so that he got more stimulated to actually end up working. All right, so this kind of describes the psychological triggers as well as the environmental triggers. We won't really go into the social triggers much, but you can definitely see, a lot of these. And yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and this breakdown. Have an amazing day. May the flow be with you. Stay legendary.